Welcome to Verify in Field, the Millwork Podcast. Your host, Jacob Edmond, CEO of Ductworks, will be interviewing experts in the industry to bring you insights and knowledge about the latest trends, techniques, and challenges in millwork. Whether you're a seasoned professional or just starting out, this podcast is for you. So sit back, relax, and join us as we explore the world of millwork. Here's Jacob.
Thanks for joining me, guys. Today we have two guests, Hanna, who is a regional lead at BIMTM, and Jeff Drews, owner at BIMTM, joining us to talk about BIM in the millwork industry and BIM in general, really. I think to get started, it'd be great if you guys each tell us a little bit about yourselves, BIMTM, and just how you guys ended up where you're at today in the industry.
Alex, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. I kind of fell into it, just like everyone else here in the BIM industry. No one really knows BIM exists or any of that stuff until you get into drafting and design. My background came from modular construction, manufacturing, and then got put into leadership roles. And now I'm here at BIMTM doing the same thing, setting the pace out in the West.
Nice. So you're the West region of BIMTM's clients,
Yes.
I assume. Awesome. And are you in the West, or where are you actually located, like in the U.S.?
So I'm actually in Boise, Idaho. I'm not as west as I could be, but I'm out there.
Yeah.
A lot more west than Wisconsin.
Yes.
And how long have you been with BIMTM?
I started BIMTM in January, so 5 months now.
Awesome. Okay, cool. Jeff, you're up on deck.
Yeah, Jeff Drews. How did I get started in BIM? Somebody asked me if I wanted to learn Revit like 13, 14 years ago, and I said, sure, why not? And that's really where it all started from. I started dabbling with the tools and just really fell in love with it immediately and wanted to learn all aspects of it and figure out how to do things more efficiently. And my love for it turned into being a BIM manager for a couple of different companies, and then eventually getting to the point where I wanted to do it on more of a mass scale and help the construction industry as a whole. So that's where BIMTM came from.
Awesome. And how long ago did you start BIMTM?
We officially opened in January 2021.
Okay.
But we had been working on it a little bit behind the scenes for probably 6 months before that.
So over 2 years now?
Yeah, just about.
Awesome. Tell us a little bit more about BIMTM. So what services do you guys offer, and what have you guys settled into a niche in the industry, or what does your client base and the work you guys do look like today?
Yeah, so I guess BIM as a whole, that's architectural engineering, construction, subcontractors, owners, and I guess our niche is more in the subcontractor and contractor side of things, but we do help everybody. Our main services are BIM consulting, content development, and then we do some service work as well.
Okay. And so for people who may not be familiar, in BIM, generally we're talking about Revit, right?
Correct. Yeah, our bread and butter is Revit, Navisworks, Recap. We do some scanning work and that type of thing as well.
Okay. And there are some other, maybe lesser known software that work and are compatible. I think like there's BricsCAD, maybe versions of Vectorworks and some things like that. But largely, most everybody, particularly in the U.S., is probably using Revit for all of their BIM modeling, at least.
I would say 99% in the vertical construction. Civil 3D is considered BIM, but it's a site and road work and that type of thing.
Awesome. Continuing on that vein of, okay, so for people who may be listening that, hey, I've heard of BIM, but I don't really understand what it is. So obviously it stands for Building Information Modeling. I think most people who do know a little bit about it maybe work in the industry and think of it just as that, hey, that's Revit models, right? 3D models of the construction and what goes into it. But as you just alluded to, there's other things that are considered BIM that are a part of BIM. And talking a little bit more about that, what is BIM and why is it so important these days in construction?
Usually when my friends and family ask me what BIM is, I tell them I essentially do virtual construction. So we help to plan out the job and create a better communication tool so that our non-BIM users know what's coming before issues pop up in the field. Another way to look at it is it's essentially a visual database. So we create essentially an Excel database of information that's tied to a 3D model. So
Right.
we're really figuring things out far in advance.
Yeah, that's great. That's a good summary. And I think that idea that it is a visual database, and then, you know, what you said, that the goal ultimately is to be able to plan ahead, right? So historically, architecture, construction, you're doing drawings, and back in the day, maybe they were hand drawings. We evolved to CAD, but it was still largely two-dimensional, right? Okay, we've got a plan, we've got elevations, we've got sections that show the owner, the client, hey, this is what you're going to get, shows the builder, the contractor, hey, this is what you need to build, and some of the important details. But all of it is information that we're communicating to coordinate different people, different trades that are ultimately trying to unify towards an end goal. And BIM, and we can go way down a rabbit trail, I'm sure, of different levels, right, of like how many layers of information there are packed in your model, right, and what there is. And some of it is materials and hardware and stuff. But essentially, what you're trying to do is plan before actual things get built and see problems as well as what needs to happen, right?
Absolutely. Allocate space so we're not fighting in the field, and it allows us to plan so that prefabrication is an option. So
how does BIM contribute to kind of the overall project lifecycle as we know it today? And I assume largely these days, when you're working on a project that's large enough to need somebody like yourself, hey, a third-party company to come in and help us with the BIM modeling, the BIM coordination, whatever it is, that service you guys are doing there, right? This is largely probably commercial construction in the U.S. And so tell us a little bit about what does the larger project lifecycle look, and then the work that you guys do in BIM, how it fits into that in today's industry.
Alex, do you want to handle that one?
Yeah, BIM project lifecycle has been a big topic lately about what happens to the model after the project's complete, right? And a lot of times it just takes space up on a server. A lot of the larger projects, we'll talk airports for instance, they have a BIM model, 3D scans, and that data lives somewhere. And a lot of times if there's remodel or new terminals getting put in, a lot of stuff gets brought back out and updated. In a perfect world, model lifecycle would be consistently living. You'd be updating it every year. You'd be looking into it. You'd be putting your maintenances and stuff in there as well. But right now there's not I don't know if there's an absolute great solution for that right now, but there is a definite need to use a lot of those BIM models that are collecting dust. And I think we don't really know how to fully utilize that in its entirety right now. A lot of upfront cost in BIM models are used for production and fabrication, prefab, finding all the issues and having a smooth construction process. BIM as a process includes that end life cycle. What happens in 25 years to the model? What happens in 25 years when the building falls down or something has to be remodeled? And so we're still kind of looking for that all-inclusive solution, which is not out there, but people are getting into that. And I think we're trying to take a stab at it too and really get part of that fabrication lifecycle process.
So largely today, right, you said it's used for the planning and kind of the fabrication, the construction phase of a project lifecycle. The goal, and there are ways of doing this, but it's, I would say, probably largely inaccessible to the end users of how to utilize this data, how to leverage this model and update it, right? But so as of today, largely where you're working is, and I'm going to try to paraphrase and summarize for listeners, and you guys correct me where I'm wrong, but like architects and engineers, right, have design development where they're working with a client and maybe start working with a builder, a GC or somebody of, hey, we need to design a building just as you would draw it in 2D in the past. Now you can model it in 3D and still use Revit, use your BIM model to get those same 2D drawings, right? So in Revit, in whatever tool you guys are using your BIM model, that whole process still largely looks the same, but those processes can be streamlined, made more effective, especially as things evolve using BIM, using a Revit model of, okay, maybe we have the shell of the building and we have floor plans. So one aspect of this is, hey, if we, as the design development stage goes through, right, we're not even ready for don't know what you would call base bid or whatever, like stages. So we're going to throw a bunch of terms out here that may not make sense to everybody, right? But when we talk about the construction, the design phase, right, it's, hey, we're getting to, it's constantly evolving and going through stages of development. And so one of the benefits from my perspective is of using BIM is, hey, say the owner decides I want to change the roof pitch, or say I want to change the floor height, or say I want to completely change this layout, right?
Yeah.
Old process, somebody's actually going into your drawings or CAD and totally reworking that. You might have to rework the floor plan, then go rework your elevations to match it, then go update your sections and hope you catch everything. So if you've started in Revit, for example, and you have a 3D model that your 2D drawings, so your floor plans, all those things are produced from, you are just editing your model, and all of that is updated real time, as well as maybe the data behind it. So maybe your door schedules, maybe your window schedules or other things.
In a perfect world. A lot of people do this, I don't want to say half-assed, but half-assed version of BIM, and they'll utilize it for like their 3D model, like a rendering type thing and a floor plan, but they pull in all these old details because they use it on the last job.
Yep. So that's another thing, and we're probably going to constantly oscillate between perfect world, blue sky, what's supposed to happen, what's intended to be used, and what is happening a lot of the time, which is, I imagine, where you guys come in, as well as a lot of times where clients will pull you in and say, hey, fix this for us, or hey, can you help us and clean up our mess. That's the real vision of BIM. And I think the part that people don't know about that or understand is, I think everybody can conceptually, people who aren't familiar with firsthand using CAD or any of this, right? They understand, oh, it's a 3D versus 2D, right? So now I have a model, and then they can conceptualize, okay, I can see how that gives you your 2D, but there's other layers of data to this as well that, hey, all of your, and again, depending on how versed users are in the tools of Revit, how to use it, right? But you can have those details be linked to it. You can have your schedules, so you can actually have data behind it, right? Of, hey, I need this many 3070 doors of this type. And it's not just the model, but there's model numbers, there's schedules, there's all that, and that can be continually updated.
Hardware that's on that door,
hardware on the door
for you're on, and for ordering
even material takeoffs and stuff. And there's even plugins now, right? Of, hey, if you're doing stick framing or if you're doing metal framing, that can take, hey, here's my masses of walls, let's extrapolate through here, sheathing and all that stuff, right? So it can go very deep, but what percentage of users maybe are using it to its fullest ability? What would you guys guesstimate of people that are actually, like, what is let's say 80-20, what are 80% of people who are using BIM today, talking about architects, engineers, right? How much of it are they using?
20%.
Yeah.
If that. Yeah. There's a big education gap right now with that.
Yeah, a lot of times it's, processes are built internal, and then internal people just improve their own processes, and they face issues and solve their own issues with their own processes. And there's no community out there in groups to talk about the same issues and processes. So if I have someone like us come in and do a BIM coaching session, assess the situation, be like, yeah, we've seen this solution and this solution that might actually help your process. Then they're like, oh, okay, now I went from 20 to 30%, or holy crap, I could be doing this, and why am I doing this? But a lot of the internal processes, people come in, they set it up, and then they don't ever really evaluate that. It's just their process, and it turns into, we've always done it that way.
So would you say that a lot of companies, and more specifically like design companies that are using BIM as the original creators of the models, so architects, designers, engineers, obviously there's been a big push just in general in the industry of, there's pressure to, hey, move from 2D CAD, move from older tools to Revit, right? So there's probably a lot of people who are begrudgingly using Revit, or, hey, we've got to make this move. You're now tasked with setting up our standards, and now we have to use it. There's probably a ton of users who are just, hey, this is now what we use, but they've never really actually shifted their mindset and the way they work from, hey, we've got to get a Revit version of our old title block and template in here, right? And this is the way we did things, and we've shoved them into Revit. Hey, we've got 2D details versus actually pulling a detail from our model, I imagine. So, and then you guys both have worked in previous roles before BIMTM as, I would imagine, the equivalent of a BIM manager or a VDC manager. And for listeners, again, who aren't familiar, if you're in a large company or a large team that is using Revit on a day-to-day basis, you may have a lot of designers, a lot of architects, a lot of engineers that are using it. When you get to that level of any CAD software, any software in general, you have to develop some standards of, hey, how do we use this tool? How do we have templates? Do we have libraries? But there's a lot of kind of open space for interpretation and how people do that. And probably a lot of, hey, I'm going to figure it out, instead of leveraging maybe what resources, or maybe they're not given access to external resources like
I think that's a big
right?
problem too, is a lot of companies don't necessarily see the value or want to spend the money in bringing in some kind of outside resource. They have this person they hired already. They have Revit on their resume. You're a BIM manager.
Right.
Yeah.
They might have gone through school, but honestly, most schools aren't teaching BIM management or anything like that. They're giving you a high level, this is how Revit works. Good luck.
So let's give it for a contractor, maybe. Okay, we're going to adapt to new technology, and where now there's a piece of machinery we can buy, a heavy front end loader or an excavator or something, right?
Right.
It's kind of like spending money on that and saying, okay, this is the team that used to excavate my foundations with shovels and pickaxes. Here's a great new tool. Figure it out.
Yeah.
As opposed to
probably the best way of explaining it.
If you're buying it from Caterpillar or whoever, whichever brand you guys go, you're probably going to get with that nowadays. Okay, we're going to have onboarding. We're going to have orientation to it. There's going to be training, or you're going to send your people away to them to go learn it, right? People might not understand that, but you're essentially, when you're buying Revit and you're saying, hey, now I'm going to have my team of 10, 20, 30 people. Now this is the tool you're going to use. You're really probably spending about on par with that money on just the tool, the libraries, right? But not the training and knowledge. And so now the implications, I would say, are far greater with the software, is that from day one, the second you make something, those things you're creating have fingers and everything. Whereas with a tractor, that tractor can only be used on one job site at one time, and you can take it to a new job site and you're starting fresh again. In BIM and CAD and all this stuff, it's okay, I'm going to go copy the old project and I'm going to use it for the next one. And now all those mistakes of the way you did things are rampant everywhere, right? So if you don't start clean, you end up probably where a lot of your clients are, which is, hey, this is what we have. These are the libraries we have. This is the way we've been taught to use it. And a lot of people are taught to use the tool on that company's way of using it, right?
Yeah, or wherever they came from before that. Yeah.
And again, it was that internal knowledge.
So how does what you guys do today, right? Imagine there's a chunk of it that is, hey, we need help in this. Can you do the work for us? There's some of it that's, hey, can you help us improve our processes? Can you help us with whatever? What does that look like most commonly if you were to create a stereotypical company that needs your help? What does that look like? What are some of the biggest mistakes they're making, or things that they aren't aware of that you're able to come in and help them in the low-hanging fruit, so to speak?
I think what you just explained a little bit ago, where people are saving their last project and utilizing that as their template moving forward, is pretty common. They don't necessarily have a library set up or an actual template set up. And I think that's probably the low-hanging fruit where you can come in and help them develop a template and processes and procedures and content that actually works for their specific needs. Because a lot of firms will just utilize out-of-the-box Revit content and not even realize that, hey, I can make this work better for me. I can inject the parameters that I need, work with the schedules. They just make do with what they have.
Yeah, I think.
And how does? Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think training is another one. Like a lot of companies out there get Revit, they struggle, and they buy plugins and plugins and plugins that are supposed to help. And they buy the plugins not knowing that Revit does this out of the box. A good foundation of Revit knowledge is probably another one that I think that 80% we're talking about is missing. a good knowledge of how things work, and then how that plugin just makes their workflow that much better instead of being their workflow. So that I think is some of them.
And the plugin only helps so much. If you don't know how to use Revit, the plugin isn't going to help you that much more. It makes you more efficient when you know what you're doing, but if you don't have a baseline, it might help 1%, but who knows?
Let's talk a little bit again about, the blue sky ideal use of BIM in construction. Mm-hmm. And if companies do have good standards, they do have good VDC management, somebody that's developed libraries for them, right? The ideal scenario and what's possible with it, as far as one, obviously the design process, the coordination of the trades and stuff, right? Let's talk a little bit more about that, because the ideal scenario and the goal of it, if people are able to leverage all these things, is you're able to use it through the design process. And as you're going, basically this model is getting more and more refined, having more and more data in it, right? And eventually you get to a stage where, just thinking about like a large commercial contract project. So maybe you have a multi-story hospital. And so the design's finalized, but as we all know, in the construction life cycle, basically it's never done until the building is literally done, punch list is done, right? And so the idea of like this virtual twin, kind of throw out some more buzzwords, right, that people might hear, but the goal is that model evolves with the project life cycle. And so as the GC bids the job and then they start bringing in subcontractors, those subcontractors can be leveraging that coordination model, that central model that the architect created and is continuing to update, right? And so there's tools and plugins and the ability now to put in HVAC, put in plumbing, put in millwork, and coordinate all of that, with the goal being, hey, all these trades now, instead of them talking in the field and taking measurements, and nobody knows if it's coordinated until it's done, and then you have issues, right? Is if each of those trades is able to put their scope accurately into this coordination model, then everybody's able to see, oh, that duct needs to go there, so I need to maybe build a soffit above my cabinet that's going to clear it, right? And both of those trades know, the architect and owner are able to see. So that's like the blue sky model, right? What the vision is for this, that probably has never actually fully happened that way, right?
I don't know about never, but not
very rarely, right?
Yeah, what you're talking about happens on every single job, whether trades model it accurately, and if it gets to the point where it's a clash-free model, that's questionable. Usually they get to the point where they're like, yeah, we're pretty good, we'll figure it out from there, kind of thing.
If all the trades do their part and actually put in accurate information. But at the same time, like, if you don't have a clash-free model, but finding those clashes in the model means you don't have them in the field. So that's part of the goal as well.
Right.
Yeah.
And I guess for listeners who maybe don't know what we mean, a clash in a model is literally, oh, hey, there's something that needs to go here, and then there's another trade stuff that needs to go here. And in real life, that can't happen. And so the model shows you, hey, there's a clash here, which is a feature of Revit. There's some clash detection and things.
Yeah, it does that. But Navisworks is the industry standard for running clashes. So everyone can do their exports from Revit and Navisworks, and then it'll run through and show you the 10,000 clashes that you have. You group it down into something that's a little bit more manageable.
So speaking from our trade, millwork, right? So we're one of the finished trades at the end of the life cycle, and it is becoming more and more prevalent that contracts are asking for or requiring BIM coordination. And so a lot of our clients at Ductworks, a lot of people in the millwork industry are seeing that and having questions about it, and either guessing or I know a lot of companies are saying, hey, we're excluding that, we're just not going to do it, but we'll do the job without it, right? Because very few companies in the millwork industry, at least, either have the ability or know what to do. So I wanted to talk today and bring that perspective of, okay, what is BIM? And then now talking about when we get into those later stages of subcontractor, what does that look like, that coordination specifically? What does that mean? And so, like, for those finished trades, we talked about it a little bit, right? It's what is your scope, modeling it in a way that can be brought into the central model. Tell us a little bit about that kind of process of the coordination model, trades putting their scope in, like what happens and how does that work?
Alex, you want to take that?
Yeah, when trades are bringing their models in, I mean, we can talk millwork too. My background was a modular factory, and we had a shop that did cabinets and custom cabinetry and all that stuff. So we coordinated that in our documents. Basically, all trades have their model, they link them together, they work through clashes, they coordinate together, word pipe, make MEPs, all that stuff's ran. A lot of times when you're putting cabinets in the model, you're coordinating with electrical, or coordinating outlets on the walls above countertops, plumbing penetrations for a lot of your sinks, wet rooms. If you're doing kitchens, like commercial kitchens, you got floor drains, you got a lot of sinks and mop sinks to worry about as well. I don't know if you're doing millwork in there, but this kind of coordination needs to happen before the project goes online, obviously, because we're talking 3D to 2D before. Like if you're not using Revit or you're not in 3D, you've seen the guys on site that hold the papers together and they stare up at the sun and try to make sure that they're all lined up and the paper clear says not to scale. And so that was coordination before we were getting into 3D modeling and Revit and stuff like that. And putting millwork in the mix, I think, is smart because more often than not, MEPs need bigger spaces or more space to move around, and that affects walls, and then the walls affect the cabinetry, and the cabinetry either gets shrunk or moved, and then other walls have to move because you have spaces that are acquired by, if we're talking ADA, a lot of times architects plan that down to the gnat's ass. You're talking 60-inch round circles, and it's a 60-inch round turnaround in the bathroom only. And then sometimes it's not even taken in case the baseboard. And then you realize, oh, the bathroom has to grow now a half inch. Now your plumbing moves. Now your cabinetry moves. So coordination is understanding how all those parts and pieces fit together, and that even though a wall has moved or one MEP is in the way, that MEP affects that thing, and then that thing affects that thing, and then that thing affects that thing. And then, oh, did you tell the millwork guys? And then you guys get in there and you're an inch short or an inch too long. Your countertop's hanging out the door. I've seen that happen before in the past. But definition of coordination is knowing those things and how everything affects everything else in a building.
Awesome. And I know a lot of this, particularly for listeners who maybe have a millwork company or are working in a millwork company, and you're bidding jobs that are requiring this, and there's a lot of terms maybe that are in the specs that you're not familiar with, don't know where to go. Some things you're probably going to see are LOD, which stands for level of development, and there's, I assume, some resources online. Is there a good place that you would recommend people go for kind of understanding those terms and just as a point of reference to have in their back pocket?
I think it was the University of Purdue. They came out with the original definition of it. The problem with that is each general contractor has a little bit of their own definition of what that means. Typically, your BIM execution plan spells out what that means for each individual trade, but it still is a little ambiguous at times.
So you said something there, BIM execution plan. Tell us about that. What is that? Who creates that?
That depends on the project. Sometimes owners specifically create BIM execution plans for their specific needs on that job. And I think you're going to see that more often in the future here. Hopefully the near future, because if those owners are writing their BIM execution plans, they're going to be able to utilize that model more effectively throughout the life cycle. The way things are now, architects and general contractors typically write a BIM execution plan, but it doesn't necessarily have the owner's needs laid out because they don't necessarily know how the owner's going to utilize it downstream.
Okay.
So it's their best guess on how this model should be executed for construction.
So if I'm a millwork manufacturer and I'm bidding against an RFQ that has specs and it just says LOD 300, LOD something. If we want to give advice that allows them to be an informed sub, to ask the right questions, what would be the first questions you guys would want to ask the GC to confirm, hey, what does this mean for this GC, and what do I need to make sure I have covered?
Honestly, go ahead.
Yeah, if we're talking like specific, let's say millwork, and they say LOD 300 or 350, I'm immediately thinking, okay, poles and handles. Typically, that's not an issue unless you have corner cabinets and it's not thought about at all. But At any time, cabinetry, in my opinion, doesn't have to be up to that level unless you are doing tight corners and it's a specific pull that's very custom. Then I would say that's required. And then you can
add to that though is a lot of these BIM execution plans are blanket statements.
Yeah.
So if you're bidding a job, you're absolutely like you can ask for exceptions. So if you see that somebody's asking for the moon and there's absolutely like no purpose for it, there's been plenty of jobs that we've gone after where we said, hey, I see this says this is a BIM requirement. Is it all right if we do this? And 9 times out of 10, they're like, yeah, that's fine. I don't care.
Right. So to bring this all kind of full circle into some very approachable, not scary descriptions of what that coordination looks like, essentially, and you said polls, hardware, right? So what that coordination really is asking for and needing is essentially a 3D model. It can be as simple as a 3D model in a CAD-friendly format that can be imported into the Revit coordination model. So you know, we talked all this time about how intelligent the Revit model is, right? And at this stage, we're going dumb, right? Of, hey, what we really need is to import into that intelligent model your dumb 3D model to see when I put it where it says it's supposed to go, are there conflicts and does it line up with things? So things I immediately think about from millwork are maybe there's a large storefront wall and the millworker has wall paneling that the reveals need to align with the horizontal mullions or something like that, right? So your BIM coordination could be as simple as, hey, if I have a 3D model of my wall panels that shows accurately, I've got a rectangle of 3/4 thickness panel, this far off the wall, 1/4 inch reveals, that can literally be modeled in CAD from the millworker, and somebody like BIMTM or your whoever's handling the BIM coordination and the BIM model for you guys. And this is, and we'll touch on this in a second, how that works with millworkers or what options are, but it can be as dumb as that, as, hey, I'm going to take a 3D CAD model and pull it into the BIM coordination model, put it in the correct location, and then see, is it as expected? Are there any issues? Does it line up? Are there maybe HVAC grill returns or something that have a conflict that nobody caught before now? To put it in simple terms, that's really all that's trying to happen. Like, I think a lot of times it seems very scary, and this is like this, I don't know how to make this work or what's going on, or I don't have that intelligent, but from the coordination side of the subs, it's largely just that simple.
Absolutely. Yeah, and touching on the Revit piece, they might not even ask for it to be brought into Revit at all. Sometimes it's just a DWG export that they're clashing in Navisworks or something like that. So it's asking the right question on the front end of the job too.
Okay, so that's great. Asking our question of like, how is the coordination, who's handling the coordination, and what software are they doing it in, and what file types are you needing for it?
Exactly.
What's expected to. If coordination's expected to run Clash with MEP, I'm sure a 2D drawing would work. Probably a 3D placement of sink and stuff would be better. If you're talking just like coordination for fit, as far as finish, you know, that's a DWG. We're talking 2D to 3D. DXF exports, those work just as well. If you have software that's making 3D cabinets in CAD and export as a DXF, and those can be referenced.
So for our Millwork listeners, if you use software already, like Microvohm, like 2020, like Wood CAD CAM or Homemade IX or Cabinet Vision, or many others that you use for your manufacturing output as well as your shop drawings, and it creates a 3D model of your products, your cabinets, for example, that 99% of the time can be exported in a format that could be pulled into Revit or Navisworks, it sounds like, for the coordination needs.
Yep, absolutely.
So in my experience, I had to do this a couple times on millwork jobs where a lot of times it happens to be government jobs. Like we did a large courthouse where they required it. Yep. In practice, what it ended up being was, as the millworker, we were basically just trying to comply with the law of the contract, and it was basically documentation. Hey, this is what we're already in the process of building. Here's a 3D model that we paid a third party, the coordination company that was doing the BIM model for this job, to pull in and basically put it in there. And so there is value in that of, okay, now we have a as-built model that shows all the scope in it. But the goal is really for the coordination ahead of time to be able to say, yep, okay, what you said you're going to build lines up and coordinates, and there's no clashes with anything coordination. Or maybe that electrical subcontractor is able to look at it and say, hey, I actually need this change to happen now that I see your model, right?
Correct. Yeah, you satisfy coordination requirements. The only issue with it is you aren't necessarily helping the life cycle of that building. So if it's not all in a uniform program like Revit or something like that, you don't have that those parameters that you can dial into in your facility maintenance software.
Right. So let's talk about how that, what you just said, is and can be possible. I know of very few, but like in Revit, you have the ability to have families and families. So for millworkers that are familiar with parametric software that we use, like Microvellum, Cabinavision, similarly in Revit, families are libraries that you can have cabinet families, for example. So I can have a family of base cabinets that I can pull into my Revit model and put in a two-door base that has parameters that can height, width, depth, as well as things like poles, hardware, all that stuff, right? Like basically the sky's the limit of how much you bake into that, how complex you develop those families. Yeah. But if you do, that can be used and be intelligent, like everything we talked about beforehand. So you can have hardware schedules that actually incorporate your casework. You can have shop drawings created in Revit that are also part of your BIM coordination model, for example.
Start to get value from it. Just speaking on the MEP side of things, it's a pretty similar transition to, I think, what Millwork's running into now, where they're a little hesitant to get into it because they don't see the value in it. They've been doing things for 100 years and it's worked their way. So why do they need to move into this coordination? Like we talked about before, we're finding issues before they become issues. But as long as we're putting all that effort into coordinating our model, how do we utilize that even further downstream? So if we create parametric families that we can do fabrication and spool drawings off of, all of a sudden we're getting more value, and all of a sudden all this effort that we're putting into it is turning into a return on our investment instead of just a necessary evil of the project.
So you've seen a similar kind of evolution in MEP that I would guess is probably already further than Millwork is, but like they were a number of years ago where Millwork is today of, okay, begrudgingly complying with the requirements from the GC architect, but now they're starting to realize, okay, if we actually adopt this and build our processes around it, as opposed to just, hey, are we meeting the bare minimum requirements, we can actually leverage it and use it to change our processes going forward.
Yeah, it takes some time to turn the boat, but once it starts turning, people really get on board and understand how to utilize it for their advantage. So to that point, MEPs, they're about 5 years into it. There's still a lot of MEP contractors that are just getting on board now and going through those same growing pains, we'll say. But at least they have their counterparts that they can look at to see, hey, they're doing it, it must work, kind of thing.
So what is a very sophisticated MEP contractor using BIM today look like?
We work with a lot of MEP contractors who utilize it for estimation, design, coordination, fabrication. They utilize it for robotic total station in the field so that they can locate things more efficiently, 3D scanning to make sure that what's being built on their, or what's in their renovation model is actually what's on the job site, so they can start to overlay things to get exact measurements. And very soon here, I think we're going to see HoloLenses start to become a mainstream thing where you can do your installation right off of what you're seeing in front of you.
So that's a whole side of things we didn't touch on. Everything we've talked about is two things, but you touched on like renovations, right? So we've talked basically about blue sky, new construction, right? But there's a large chunk of work that is renovations where you're starting from scratch, but in reality, you're not. You're having to work inside of or on to existing construction that you don't have a model of. And so this gives you the ability to, one, I assume, go and take, for example, like point clouds and laser scans, and then merge those into your actual new construction models, I assume, right? And coordinate that even through the phase of the project. Okay, now here is stuff that we modeled that's being built. Does it match what we built and overlay? Is that in Navisworks and Revit or other tools that they're overlaying those things?
The point cloud, yeah, I think those are the main two. The funny thing about 3D scanning and point clouds is it's taking the same evolution that just BIM adoption has. It's been around for 5 years. People don't really see the value in it. They don't want to spend the money doing it. I remember being on a job within the last few years where it was an existing model and the engineer put a note on there that said plus or minus 1 foot for column location. And it's what? Why don't you just go out there with a 3D scanner and we'll figure out where everything actually is?
And now I do know actually even some mill workers that are using things like open space, I think it's called, where you basically go to the job site with a camera on your helmet and your hard hat, and it's less detailed. One, it's, I assume, just taking 3D photographs and stuff, but that too can be used very effectively. Okay, just the fact of I can't be at the job site. So for you guys, you're not going to every one of your clients' job sites, but that ability to capture data and literally just see, okay, what stage is it at in? Is this matching my model? The tools that are coming out today are being developed and happening at such a rapid pace compared to the adoption, I would assume, right?
Yeah, it is.
But the people who have already started adopting are the ones who are able to start taking advantage of these new tools. Faster.
And once they're getting on board with it, they're realizing, like, why are we fighting with existing documents that aren't even necessarily the way things were built? Let's just go out there and scan the job, and we'll do a scan to BIM on it so that we know that we're starting on a clean slate.
Something else you started talking about was HoloLens, and for those who don't know, that's essentially like augmented reality, AR, being able to visualize your model with some sort of AR type device. But even beyond that, like there's today, like if you are using these 3D models, there's things where, for example, you can pull up the model. It's very easy to share a 3D model, a very simplified version of it that you can pull up on your phone, your tablet or something and orbit around, be able to see even portions of it, right? I've seen where now like very sophisticated and even not super sophisticated GCs, you can go into a room on a construction space, scan a QR code and see the virtual model of the space you're in, right? Yep. And there are apps that can do augmented reality on your phone where, hey, I can see this space, which sounds to some people listening probably, hey, that seems crazy, but it is very accessible these days to do simple stuff like that once you have a 3D model.
Yeah, and I think we're in a really exciting time. I think for the last 10 years, us BIM users, we've been using it and we've been sharing it with 2D documentation. Now, all of a sudden in the last 5 years, everyone's getting their hands on BIM, whether you know how to use Revit or not. Right. You have access to it with the Autodesk construction clouds and other softwares like that, where you can go on the web and spin around it and pull data from it and find out what circuit that light fixture is in a way that you've never been able to do that before.
Yeah. So almost coming full circle to where we started, Alex, where you were describing how there's still a lot of discussion or debate or what happens at the end of a project, the end where the actual, really the start of the use of this building is happening to all this data. And as we just touched on, up until lately, the access of this data has been very limited to people who have Revit or an application that can actually load this. And now it's more accessible than ever that there's cloud applications and ways to publish these models in very accessible ways in free apps, essentially. Okay, if your design professional or your BIM team or whoever has this model can be published and it can be made accessible in a lot of ways. And now Autodesk Construction Cloud used to be BIM 360 Glue, and there's a bunch of different versions of this, but essentially everybody has in their pocket a device that can load and view these models. Right. I think that's the technology of both the hardware and the software now is made it accessible to basically everybody.
And even besides Autodesk Construction Cloud, like Revisto and Deluxe, and there's other softwares out there. So it doesn't matter. You don't have to be tied down to one specific software or anything like that. There's choices.
Right. There's even 3D PDFs and things like that.
Yeah.
Alex, you wanted to say something?
Along with the scanning and the walking around a virtual out of the room, Revit's had that capability since 2018 with whenever rendering came out in it. But How many people used it? How many people even knew about it? I found out about it in 2020. It's that technology is there, and it goes down to training again. What can you utilize to do that? And we're talking facility maintenance. If you had a model that was up to date and now it lives on a server at that facility, and you put on a HoloLens, now you can see through walls where all your MEP stuff is, or hey, I got a pipe busted, and here's the pipe. Dig here instead of going out there with 2 rods looking for the pipe leak in the parking lot. So there's a lot of potential there. I just don't think anyone is taking full advantage of what BIM as a process can do for them.
And I think circling back to some kind of tangible, actionable advice for some of our listeners. So if you're a millwork manufacturer or really any trade, and what you touched on there, like maintenance and things like that, there are a lot of projects that are on buildings now that probably were originally built using a BIM model. And people aren't probably thinking of this, but if I'm a mill worker, if I'm somebody that is having to do a small scope of work, a lot of times what's very common for us when we're doing shop drawings, we're doing submittals, and we're doing work is either, hey, we first will request CADs at the very least of the floor plan and things for, okay, let's not just draw from scratch what the architect's already drawn. Let's put this in the space as accurately as possible. So even if you're not using BIM or you're not using Revit to model your scope of work, that can be extracted from there in both 3D and 2D to be able to at least say, hey, can we get the exports? Can we get the CAD models from the architect, from the design professional? And especially if it's a remodel or something and you're saying, hey, we don't want to just have to go start from scratch and field dimension and draw this from scratch, you can ask for that and say, hey, is there a BIM model? Is there a CAD model of this that we can at least be starting from the beginning with what is the most accurate representation of this space? Asking, one, from my perspective, if you're bidding work and they're requiring BIM, I would hope that it gets to a point where that is, oh, wow, this is a job that can go very well for us because the design team is creating a model that all these trades can coordinate. And I think today, most trades that aren't used to doing this, it's crap, they're going to have to do all this extra work. Yep. The goal is, hey, wow, this is actually a very sophisticated GC architect client that they've got a model. Great. I don't have to start from scratch. And
it's overwhelming though.
Oh yeah, it's overwhelming, but I think that's the vision. The goal is if we can get there and you can take some of this and hopefully get the idea of, okay, I don't need to understand everything about BIM, but what I can take away hopefully is it's for coordination. There's a lot of data and information available that what can I leverage from that? So whether that's CAD files, whether that's the 3D model, that's, hey, is there stuff that somebody else is doing the work for me that I can basically just plug in what we're doing to it in the same form?
Right. They probably have casework in there as a placeholder. It's just not accurate.
Yeah. And a lot of times that architect is probably putting in some generic family products, right?
Yep.
That's just very basic. Okay, so they probably have cabinets in their model that tell you height, width, and depth at the very least, and probably tell you whether they're expecting a 1-door or 2-door. Now, there's probably a lot of architects and designers out there that are using 2D details or things like that, but those are the questions you can ask from start. Okay, hey, this is a job that is requiring BIM coordination. Give me the information you have at this point, and let me start with that as a starting point, and then from there, I'll put my stuff into it and not reproduce work. That's really the end goal of all of this. Is historically, this trade is this industry is a bunch of trades basically repeating work that somebody else did before them because they probably didn't do it right. So I'm going to just start over and make it right. And it's a bunch of people replicating efforts. And the goal, in my opinion, of BIM is how can we all build on each other's work as opposed to duplicating efforts for the same thing.
Exactly. Let's leverage each other's work and piggyback off of it.
So looking to the future in construction and the use of BIM, what do you see? We talked about some of the emerging technologies and HoloLens and virtual reality and augmented reality. What do you guys see as the next in the industry in the next 5 to 10 years?
I don't even know if it's 5 to 10 years. AI is taking over right now.
Yeah. Have you heard of HiPAR? HiPAR is a web-based platform that you can type in what type of building you want, and it creates a model you can export as an OBJ. And if it's residential or if it has so many bathrooms and floor plan planning, and upload your CAD drawing to it. A lot of generative design. Eventually, it's going to get down to prefabrication, where there's an AI plugin for Revit that will just do everything for you to build it.
Yeah.
And that's what you go with. Yeah, I think that's definitely the next step. They're coming out with robots now. Next thing, they're swinging hammers.
Yeah, I think automating the prefab process from the BIM model with the, like you said, with robots, you already got Sparky walking the job site and scanning things, and the integration with ChatGPT and a safety standpoint where it yells at people for not wearing their safety glasses or hard hats and things like that. Yeah, all that data is getting integrated in with our models too. So I think it's AI and robotics are probably the future within the next 5 years.
Awesome. What advice do you have for any manufacturers, subcontractors, particularly millwork manufacturers who are seeing these BIM requirements and wondering, okay, do I need to make the jump? What actionable steps can I take? How do I find out more? All that.
Call somebody who knows what they're doing. Don't just try to do it alone. We made mistakes for the last 15 years, and that's where we're at today. Leverage somebody else's mistakes.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely reach out to someone who is willing to walk you through it. There's a lot of companies out there that will just do it. But I always come back to education. A lot of what's happening in the BIM world is education. So if you have a project that requires, don't be afraid. Don't pass it up. Find that right person to come help you out with it and walk you through it. Doesn't mean you have to jump into it right away. They can clearly do the services for you, but at least teach you about what's happening along the way. And maybe ease you into it.
Yeah.
I think the good and the bad with BIM is it can save you a lot of money or it can cost you a lot of money.
Yeah.
It depends what path you take.
And you get what you pay for with that too.
Yeah, exactly.
So finding a partner similar to BIMTM that's not only just going to say, yep, I can handle this for you, but I can come alongside you, answer your questions, educate your team, and provide guidance on what the best path is for you and really what do you need, what don't you need, and how do you get to your goals for it. And from our perspective, can this be a competitive advantage if you're one of the few mill workers out there that are saying, yep, we can do that, we're going to take that job, and we've got a process or we've got a partner to where we can successfully handle this.
Absolutely.
Okay. And you talked a little bit earlier about Purdue. Are there any other resources or things, literature, websites? Where should people go to as a good source of information on BIM and just kind of the basics?
There's this website, www.bimtm.com.
Yeah, I was just like, call us.
Awesome.
We have some great blogs and videos on here, kind of like how to get started. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good resources out there. The problem with it is there's a lot of bad resources as well.
Yeah,
there's a lot of opinions.
Don't just Google LOD. You'll get 1,000 different ways to explain it. Have a good idea of what level of detail is needed for the project. Even if it says LOD, just, okay, what does that mean to you? Is that handle says that? You want faces? Do you want the actual routing of the edges on the faces? Because that's a bit much, but
right.
Definitely have them explain to you what they want by LOD for cabinets, specifically millwork.
Awesome. So yeah, they find your website, BIMTM.com. I think that's a great tip because it can be very overwhelming if you start just Googling this stuff because BIM has become so ubiquitous and widespread. There's a lot of content out there, and just as well as there's good, there may be bad, and it may be difficult to discern that. So finding a partner like you guys that can help them navigate, answer questions, jump on a call, and help through a partner with this. You guys have any kind of final thoughts on that we didn't cover, or anything you'd like to share with the listeners about BIM or about BIMTM?
I guess my only piece of advice with it is if you're first getting into BIM, just temper your expectations with it and create some realistic goals instead of trying to roll out the door with trying to do everything at the same time. You're not going to have a successful job with full schedules, full estimation, cost analysis on your very first project out of the door. You have to build a repeatable process and build onto it.
Yes.
Awesome. Great.
I'm just
Great
excited to
advice.
see Millwork in some of these models already.
Definitely.
Yeah, for sure. I know that's something we're going to be able to partner on, especially as we can get to a lot of our clients are seeing this coming up. And if we're able to model a job from scratch in Microvellum or 3D software and be able to team up with you guys and get them into the coordination model, I think that there's definitely a great process and a lot of people we can help with getting over this hurdle. I think it's very scary for a lot of people. They start seeing this and they just go back into their shell, but there's a lot of opportunity, a lot of possibility there. So definitely exciting to see if we can keep pushing that forward, and maybe we'll get Millwork to speed past MEP on the adoption cycle.
That'd be awesome. Yeah, we'd love to help with that too.
Well, I appreciate you guys taking time to talk with us. I will include in the show notes links to both of you guys' LinkedIn, as well as a link to BIMTM.com. You can find both these guys, Alex and Jeff, on LinkedIn, as well as their BIMTM website, and hopefully I'll have you guys on again in the future and we can keep this conversation going.
Yeah, that'd be great. We appreciate you having us on, Jacob.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. Do you want to stay up to date about industry insights, new content, and our community of millworkers? Go to ductworksmw.com to sign up for our newsletter. I'll see you in the next episode of Verified in Field.